Imagine waking up one morning to find that newspapers have blank spaces where important stories should be. Opposition leaders have disappeared overnight. People can be arrested without a trial. And if you criticize the government publicly, you could end up in jail. This isn't the plot of a political thriller. This actually happened in India. Between June 25, 1975 and March 21, 1977, India, the world's largest democracy, went through one of the most controversial chapters in its history, known simply as the emergency. But why did it happen? Was it really necessary to save the country as the government claimed? Or was it an attempt by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi to stay in power? Let's find out. To understand why the emergency happened, we first need to understand India in the early 1970s. Indira Gandhi had become immensely popular after India's victory in the 1971 war against Pakistan and the creation of Bangladesh. Many people saw her as a strong and decisive leader. But beneath this popularity, India was facing serious problems. Inflation was rising rapidly, food prices had increased, unemployment was high. There were nationwide strikes and protests. Students were protesting in Gujarat and Bihar. Political dissatisfaction was growing across the country. One of the biggest voices against the government was veteran socialist leader Jayaprakash Narayan, often called JP. JP called for what he described as a total revolution, a peaceful movement demanding political reform and an end to corruption. Large rallies were being held across India. The government believed that law and order were beginning to break down. Then came a dramatic turning point. In the 1971 general election, Indira Gandhi had won by a huge margin. However, one of her opponents challenged the election in court. On June 12, 1975, the Allahabad High Court ruled that Indira Gandhi had committed certain electoral malpractices, mainly involving the use of government officials during her election campaign. The court declared her election invalid. She was also barred from holding elected office for 6 years, although she received temporary relief while appealing to the Supreme Court. Politically, this was a massive blow. Opposition parties immediately demanded that she resign. Protests intensified, the political crisis deepened, declaring the emergency. On the night of June 25, 1975, everything changed. On the advice of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed signed a proclamation under Article 352 of the Constitution declaring a national emergency. The official reason was internal disturbance. The government argued that India faced threats to national stability and that extraordinary powers were necessary to restore order. Critics, however, argued that the real objective was to protect Indira Gandhi's position after the court verdict. Even today, historians continue to debate how much each factor contributed to the decision. What changed overnight? The emergency transformed daily life in India. Thousands of opposition leaders, activists, journalists, and trade union members were arrested under preventive detention laws. Many were imprisoned without trial. Fundamental rights were severely restricted. Citizens found it much harder to challenge detention in court. Newspapers were subjected to government censorship. Editors often had to submit articles for approval before application. Some newspapers left blank spaces where censored articles had been removed as a silent protest. Political demonstrations were banned. Criticism of the government became extremely risky. India remained formally democratic, but many normal democratic freedoms were suspended. During the emergency, Indira Gandhi's younger son, Sanjay Gandhi, gained significant political influence despite holding no elected office. He promoted a 5-point program that included family planning, tree plantation, literacy, abolition of dowry, and slum improvement. However, 2 initiatives became especially controversial. The first was the family planning campaign. Officials in some regions used pressure and coercion to meet sterilization targets. Although many sterilizations were voluntary, reports of forced or pressured sterilizations created widespread anger. Second involved slum clearance projects. Large settlements, particularly in Delhi, were demolished and many families were relocated, often with little notice or compensation. These actions remain among the most criticized aspects of the emergency. Supporters of the emergency argue that it also produced some positive results. Government offices reportedly functioned more efficiently. Railways became more punctual. Strikes declined sharply. Some development projects moved faster because bureaucratic delays were reduced. Crime rates fell in certain areas. However, critics argue that these gains came at the cost of civil liberties, democratic accountability, and freedom of expression. The debate continues even today. After 21 months, something unexpected happened. In January 1977, Indira Gandhi announced that elections would be held. Many believed she expected an easy victory. Instead, voters delivered a historic verdict. The opposition united under the Janata Party. In the 1977 general election, the Congress party suffered a major defeat. Indira Gandhi herself lost her parliamentary seat. For the first time since independence, a non-Congress government came to power at the national level under Prime Minister Morarji Desai. Soon afterward, the emergency officially ended. The experience left a deep impact on India's democracy. The new government introduced the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. This amendment made it much harder for future governments to declare an emergency. The phrase internal disturbance was replaced with the narrower term armed rebellion. Additional safeguards were added so that emergency powers could not be exercised as easily as before. These reforms were intended to prevent similar events from occurring again. Conclusion: the emergency remains one of the most debated chapters in Indian history. For some, it represents a period of discipline, administrative efficiency, and stability during a time of political unrest. For others, it is remembered as a warning about how democratic institutions can be weakened when too much power is concentrated in the executive. Regardless of political opinion, one thing is clear: the emergency changed India's constitutional and political landscape forever. It continues to shape discussions about democracy, civil liberties, press freedom, and the balance between security and individual rights. Understanding this period isn't just about learning history. It's about understanding how democracies work and why protecting democratic institutions requires constant vigilance. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others interested in Indian history and politics. See you next time. Bye-bye.